Today, we are creating the strongest character in the history of Fire Force. To make sure our character has what it takes, we'll be having them battle 3 of the toughest characters in the show. Also, we'll be sticking to the anime this time in honor of the upcoming Season 3 of Fire Force, and because the manga gets pretty wild. But let me know if you want to see a video like this again, but with the manga-related powers. We're going to first name our original character, give them 2 spontaneous human combustion forms for reasons we'll get into when it's time, pick 3 ignition abilities from any of the Fire Force cast, 3 traits or techniques like the strength or martial skills of certain characters, as well as 1 weapon they may use. With all the preamble out of the way, let's get started with the first part, the naming. The naming system in Fire Force is pretty multicultural, with a main character like Shinra Kusakabe, a rival named Arthur Boyle, and even someone named Victor Licht, so really any name will work well. As such, our character will be a young mountain of a man named Kalidus Hulkenberg. The word Kalidus means fiery or spirited, which works well in a world where fire powers are the only kind of powers, and Hulkenberg means mountain more or less, so it fits our excitable giants. As you might know, most of the powers in Fire Force are a result of a phenomenon called spontaneous human combustion, which causes people to burst into flames, creating monsters or superpowered humans, to put it simply. They're usually set up as first, second, or third generations, with the second allowing them to control fire but not create it, and the third having the ability to create fire but not control flames outside of their own. For our Kalidus, we're gonna give him the unique hybrid generation first seen in Benimaru Shinmon. As such, he's gonna have the ability to both create and control his flames as well as control any outside flames. The next combustion trait he'll have is the powers of the 4th generation, a newish intro to the lore. 4th generation is a term dubbed by Haumea for those pyro users who have awakened their Adola burst and connected to an otherworld being from Adola to grant them fire powers that often break the laws of physics and imagination. This is something that is achievable for any generation so long as they have some link to Adola, and it's necessary for Kalidus to have this link to get some of the powers we're giving him. Starting off with one of the main villains in the first season and also one of the most unbelievable powerful abilities we've seen in the anime, Sho Kusakabe's 4th generation ability, Severed Universe, naturally makes the list. In Season 1, Severed Universe is a pyrokinetic ability granted to Sho Kusakabe through his Adola link, since he is a 4th generation fire user. Through manipulating the surrounding heat, Sho cools the area surrounding his body in order to reduce the heat that causes the expansion of the universe. By doing so, he's able to freeze time temporarily, all the while allowing him to move freely, basically time powers. To give you a clear idea, Sho can move across the area for a period of time with no issue and affect the world around him with no problem. When he releases his technique, anything that is stopped in motion will suddenly be affected by his actions. Plus, it doesn't only stop time, it can also slow it down by an impressive degree. To the opponent, it will look like he's moving at superhuman speed if he's, say, making time 3 times slower, but in reality, he's just perceiving time at a greater pace and ease than his opponents. That isn't an absolute technique though, as anyone who's finished the first season will know. While it is powerful, Severed Universe does have its drawbacks, the biggest of which is, of course, what it does to the body. The ability requires the area around you to be cooled to a ridiculous degree. As such, every short usage of this technique causes your body to freeze. That's why extended usage is very risky, and you need to wait for your body to thaw out before you can use it again. Also, the ice immediately starts to melt into water when released, so anyone you're fighting will start to get a bit suspicious at seeing their shivering opponents, which could potentially ruin the surprise factor, though it takes a genius to figure out the ability just from that. The other drawback is that anyone who can travel faster than the realities of physics, then Severed Universe can't affect it. It also can't really stop any light speed attacks that take place just before or during the ability's activation. Despite the minor drawbacks, Severed Universe is one of the best abilities in the Fire Force anime. Though it only had a brief showtime, Sho used it to beat his brother, Arthur Boyle, and Hibana with 1 strike the first time, and let's face it, was only beaten because said brother had the powers of being the main character. The next power we're gonna give Kalidus belongs to the member of the White Clad, the schemer Haumea, and her ignition ability. While no official name can really be given, it essentially makes her an electric shock user, allowing her to use her pyrokinetic ability to create electricity, but that's just the basics of how she gets her powers. The nitty-gritty is that her ability allows her to manipulate the electric signals in her opponent's nerves, allowing her to manipulate and control them, basically making her enemies into puppets. That's not all. Her electricity powers allow her to mess with any electronic device near her, and she can use it to give her more maneuverability. More specifically, she uses the electricity to swing around with ease, attach herself to anything metal, and prevent any falling damage. So her ability allows her to both control from a distance and ensure she can keep that distance with her maneuverability. She even has specialized techniques within her power, like Radiohead, which allows her to use electric signals to communicate with someone from large distances. In the anime, she's seen using this to communicate with Kuron, though I don't see anything in there saying she can't use this to communicate with her opponents and distract them. That's probably because she has more effective abilities like her Motorhead skill, which gives her more precise control over her targets. Using her electric signals, an electric user could control the dopamine and endorphin levels of a target, thereby making them more aggressive, lowering their inhibitions, or even making them more passive and calm. While you can't exactly make them do what you want, you can come pretty close. The only issue is that if anything interferes with the signals, the effects eventually wear off, which is like fair? Her other named ability is called Talking Head. This one is less of a technique you activate and more of one you endure. Basically, it refers to the ability to detect and listen in on the thoughts of others, as well as their feelings. The downside is that you can't stop it, leading to a constant noise in your head. Her biggest weakness, though, is that her powers can't be used against another electricity user, like Arthur, who uses plasma, which is how he makes his sword. Besides that, it's a powerhouse of an ability that we see her use to control 3 people with ease, and is how she has set herself as a second pillar and a great threat in the Fire Force anime. Our last ignition ability comes from a rather notable figure in the Fire Brigade, Captain Leonard Burns of Company 1, and his ability Voltage Nova. Seen briefly in Season 1 and given a bit more of a taste in Season 2, Voltage Nova does the inverse of most 3rd generation fire abilities. Instead of releasing the fire outwards, Voltage Nova generates and compresses the fire within the user, stoking the body like it's a furnace and subsequently producing thermal energy that spreads throughout the body. As a result, the user's physical abilities are drastically increased. From endurability, speed, and strength, the user essentially becomes superhuman in power. They can shrug off blows that would normally crush them, leap extraordinary heights, and land with no problem. And their strikes can destroy most things in their way with minimal effort. Plus, the heat in their body doesn't stay there for long. Voltage Nova's heat starts to escape from their body as well as develop incredible pressure, creating powerful shockwaves that can displace any opponent and melt anything unfortunate enough to be within its vicinity. Moreover, this ability doesn't diminish with time. If anything, the heat and pressure simply grow more and more powerful, leading to an increase in all areas. That's why Leonard Burns refers to his time in Voltage Nova as stages. As they enter each stage, Voltage Nova's power becomes greater, and its presence is more noticeable. While there are several stages of Voltage Nova seen in the series, so far across Fire Force's 2 seasons, Leonard Burns has only displayed the first stage. When he activates stage 1, he generates an aura around him, and his patch starts to glow, likely from the firepower. In this stage, regular attacks are pretty ineffective due to the sheer pressure he releases, preventing them from coming near him. Not only that, but its defense is strong enough to block and redirect attacks from Arthur Boyle's plasma sword and the flames from Shinra's kicks, which means that it can be used to redirect flames. It doesn't just increase his defenses though, as stage 1 also amplifies his fighting power, leading to opponents being tossed away by the mere flick of his fingers. Crazy, isn't it? Now, you expect there to be some kind of drawback, but as of the current anime episodes, there's no real weakness shown in Voltage Nova. This sheer power is the reason Leonard Burns has been dubbed Fire Incarnate, and will be excellent for Kaleidos Hulkenberg. With Kaleidos' powers out of the way, we're gonna get into some of the weapons he'll have in his battles to come. After all, the gear is the coolest part. For our first weapon, we'll be looking at an iconic piece of gear that's also been found in other pieces of work. Excalibur. More specifically, the one dubbed by Arthur Boyle, used as a preferred weapon by our favorite Chuny. It's a bladeless sword that's actually functional, thanks to Arthur's status as a 3rd generation fire user. As such, it can theoretically be used by Kaleidos. The basic principle of the sword is that matter transforms in multiple stages when affected by heat, from solids to liquid to gas until it reaches the next stage, plasma. While it's not 100% clear that the blade creates plasma, Takehisa Hinowa said that it's the closest one can find to plasma cutting. Moreover, the blade is so precise and fine that when it cuts an object in 2, the pieces don't immediately fall apart, as if it doesn't realize it's been cut. Since its main purpose is to fight fire, it can fend off and redirect flames as well as cut through it with ease. And that's nothing to say about what it could do to the human body. It isn't unbelievable though. While Excalibur can't be extinguished by a 2nd generation's flame control, it can be manipulated if the person doing so has a talent like Makioze. The only time it has been extinguished by an opponent was when Leonard Burns managed to overpower and block it. It's likely that the power and strength of the blade are dependent on the user, and at the same time, Arthur was not on Leonard's level. Still, this weapon serves as a fine piece for Kaleidos in future battles. With his weapon equipped and power selected, we'll now be looking at some of the traits and techniques used by the characters in Fire Force. To start with, we'll be giving Kaleidos Benimaru Shinmon's skill with a unique fighting style, the EI hand sword. While many of us remember this being used in Season 1 by Benimaru in a climactic battle, this style of fighting isn't reserved for him. It's a fighting style used by 3rd generation fire users who also happen to be fire chiefs of the Asakura district. This style of fighting places a lot of emphasis on speed and reactivity, just like its original namesake of the EI or quick draw sword style. Since it's not a unique ignition ability but a technique, Kaleidos should have no trouble using it. As for what it can do, the EI hand sword has 7 forms it can use, each capable of creating different effects, though the anime has only shown 2 of them so far. The first form is Fire Moon, which is created when the user focuses the fire on their hand until it ignites and creates a sharp blade that, when they slash, flies off in a crescent shape that blows away and damages anyone caught in its vicinity. It also leaves behind huge trails of fire where it's struck. It's a good area of effect attack and an excellent way to keep your opponent at a distance too. The next form we see in the anime and that Kaleidos will have is, funny enough, the last one too, 7th form Sun Wheel, or Nichiren if you're weak. First seen when used against a Super Inferno or 1st generation ignition user, Sun Wheel is a technique in which the user creates a wheel of fire behind them that resembles the sun and then tosses it at the opponent. It was powerful enough to damage a demon, one of the most powerful types of Infernos. With all that in play, the EI hand sword is the perfect technique for Kaleidos' fighting style. What's left to do when you've got a tremendous level of power at your fingertips? Unleash it to its full potential! And that's why the next technique Kaleidos will be getting is Hysterical Strength. Introduced Introduced to the series by Benimaru and most notably used by himself, Arthur Boyle, and Shinra Kusakabe, hysterical strength is a technique only capable of being used by third-generation pyrokinetics. Most users are only able to utilize around 30% of their natural strength, as it is with most humans. Through this technique, one can unleash 100% of their latent heat. In fact, the power can be so immense that the user's fire often turns blue and takes a more refined shape. Achieving this ability requires the user to experience multiple life and death scenarios in order to get used to the feeling of that hysterical strength. When it was accessed, Shinra was able to use it against Leonard Burns, whom he was able to knock away from his position with a single kick. While it may seem trivial, you need to remember that Shinra was fresh from the academy at the time, even if he was talented, and Burns is one of the most decorated firefighters with a durability level that few can match, along with his ignition ability. To move him at all means that Shinra's power must have multiplied by a ridiculous degree to accomplish this. As for drawbacks, there really aren't many that we've seen besides the method in which the technique is acquired. Theoretically, you could say that the 30% limit is what we unconsciously put on in order to keep our bodies from tearing themselves apart, and that's a potential risk with hysterical strength. By using it for prolonged periods, users can risk heating their bodies to too high a degree, burning themselves in the process, or worse, risk overheating themselves and acquiring tephrosis, which will leave them in intense pain. Still, the rewards far outweigh the risks, and the damage could only be caused by overuse, which Calidus hopefully shouldn't have any worry with. With all these powers and techniques at Calidus' disposal, he has strength and durability thanks to his ignition ability, he's got a boost to his power and many ways of fighting. All that's left is the speed needed to attack before their opponent, and who better to get that from than the Fire Force's unintentional exhibitionists. Okay, there are maybe a lot of people, but the rules I put on myself have made that challenging. Still, Tamaki Kotatsu is a remarkably talented and powerful character when you get past her eccentricities, and her speed is some of the best in the anime, not least because it's part of her natural physique. Tamaki is quick, agile, and has sharp reflexes, being able to dodge attacks from Assault and Orochi, who are both very powerful pyrokinetics themselves. If she combines her ignition ability to boost her power, then she can even match Shinra's speed, which is saying something. Her natural speed and reflexes combined with Calidus' power and technique will make him an unstoppable force against any Fire Force character. With our character fully made, let's test him out against some of the toughest characters in Fire Force. And what better way to start off this chain of battles than by having Calidus face off against the bruiser of the white-clad organization, Kuron. Now, this guy is one of the toughest characters we'll see in the anime, with his physical ability at such an impressive level that blades can't cut him, fire barely does anything, and he was able to recover from Shinra's Hellfire ability with ease. His real danger comes from his second-generation ability, which essentially allows him to absorb any damage done to him and store it as thermal energy he can use to both attack and protect himself. He can move the energy around to make different explosions and attacks, and he's such a threat that even Benimaru called him a monster. His only weakness is that he can absorb so much damage at a time before he overexerts himself. As for this fight, Calidus would see the hulking man and think it's a matter of showing his superior power, only to find it very hard to knock him out. But Kuron has built some juice from the damage and smashed it all against our character, damaging, though he activated his Voltage Nova to keep him safe. Then Calidus will make the smart observation using his mind-reading abilities and figure out the trick, lulling Kuron to let his guard down with Motorhead. While relaxed, he can't activate his ability, and Calidus simply uses Excalibur to sever his head. Next up is the central figure of Fire Force, the kid called the Devil, Shinra Kusakabe. Even early in the series, when Shinra was a complete rookie to the Force, he was capable of challenging the more experienced members and even managed to beat a captain of the Fire Brigade. Shinra is incredibly durable, able to endure several hits from his brother Sho, who was a pillar at the time and could still fight effectively despite several wounds, internal bleeding, and more. His sight is generally impressive as he's able to spot Kuron, a white-clad, from several hundred miles in the air and while flying. Moreover, he's the most determined character you'll find. His innate bravery and promise to others pushes him to go forward despite the odds, and has allowed him to reach new heights despite the pain and danger. That's not even going into his ignition ability, Devil's Footprints, which allows him to blast fire from his feet to move unnaturally fast and boost his power. When used with his fighting style, his kicks can tear a limb or destroy an infernal core with ease. His Adola burst allows him to travel at light speed and at times even faster, allowing him to go back a few seconds, which is how he managed to beat a demon inferno. With all that explained, how would the fight go? Well, at first, Calidus would try to mess with Shinra's head through his nerve control, but Shinra's will and determination will help him stop it. He'll try to attack head on, and the two would duke it out for a while, but Shinra would gradually lose ground because of Calidus' natural strength and toughness. As such, he'll try to achieve light speed to finish him off. Of course, Calidus will have figured that out by reading Shinra's mind with Talking Head, and will try to use Motorhead to anger Shinra enough to be distracted, and then activate Severed Universe to keep him in place. Of course, Shinra has a counter for it, and the two will fight in frozen time, leaving it to be a matter of stamina and determination. Unfortunately for Shinra, Calidus won't fear Severed Universe's drawbacks because he has Voltage Nova, which allows him to heat up his body and prevent cold accumulation, meaning that he can keep time still for a while. Eventually, Shinra can't keep up, and that's when Calidus uses Excalibur to sever Shinra's head, winning the battle. The next next fighter Calidus will be going against is the sadistic telepath Haumea of the White Clad. Now, we've already explored quite a bit of her abilities given the fact that Calidus has it, so there's no need to repeat it. But that also means she's no pushover and is one of the biggest dangers in the series. Unfortunately for her, Haumea will find that most of her powerful abilities like Motorhead and Talking Head will be pretty useless against Calidus simply because he can reflect or redirect it with his own electricity abilities. Plus, Calidus can technically use plasma since that's how he's able to use Excalibur, which prevents Haumea's abilities. Still, realizing that her usual acts won't work, she'll keep her distance and use trickery to harm Calidus and toss large objects at him to keep him distracted. Sadly for her, Calidus would just use Sever Universe to stop time and simply incinerate Haumea to dust with his full hysterical strength. The man of constant mysteries and self-proclaimed anti-hero, Joker, is our next fight. Now, not much has been shown about his abilities, but what is clear is that he's a master hand-to-hand combatant. Will it be enough? Let's find out. Since neither party knows what they're gonna do in the beginning, they play it safe, but Calidus gets the upper hand with his Talking Head ability to figure Joker out and dodge his attacks. Joker will catch on that he can predict and will try to overwhelm him with many attacks. It will work against him, but Calidus will eventually go all out before Joker's killing blow and activate Severed Universe, allowing him to cut the man in half with Excalibur, winning the fight. Captain of Special Fire Force Company 1 and a veteran fighter, Leonard Burns is one of the strongest characters we've seen in the Fire Force anime. A lot of his abilities are already explained, so how would a fight go against this juggernaut? Well, first of all, Calidus would be wary of taking on Burns and would try to find an easy way of nullifying his heat first. So he'll use his talent with controlling flames, thanks to his hypergeneration abilities, to attempt to reduce the firepower of Voltage Nova in order to make him weaker. Leonard won't just stand there and take it, of course, and would try to close the distance, but Calidus will use his electric user abilities to swing around and create distance in order to focus on weakening Leonard's fire. Once he feels like he's got it covered, Calidus will try to use Motorhead to interfere with Leonard's thinking to slow him down. Then he'll activate Severed Universe to stop time and Voltage Nova at the first stage and begin to pummel him with as much force as possible, even using the EI Hand Sword 7th form Sun Wheel to deal some damage. He'll unfreeze time and realize that, while he hurt the guy, Leonard is still very much standing. This will force Calidus to use his hysterical strength to charge at Leonard. Calidus will be increasing its power by a ridiculous degree, and Leonard would have been weakened from the fire control and the attacks, meaning that he wouldn't be able to stop the blade from cutting him down, ending his life. Our next fight will be up against the undisputed strongest pyrokinetic in the anime, Captain of the Special Fire Force Company 7, Benimaru Shinmon. There are few people who can compare to his power, as he was able to, early in the series, beat almost every member of Company 8 at the same time with ease. He's earned the title Asakusa's King of Destruction for a reason. Besides being a master of the EI Hand Sword and a hybrid user, allowing him to control and create flames, he's able to move at an impressive speed, capable of blocking Shinra's rapid attacks, which were at hypersonic speeds. He's permanently unlocked his hysterical strength and was able to restrain a grown man as a child. He's tough enough to nullify attacks from Demon Infernos, and has the strategy and determination to recognize and finish off anyone he sees as an opponent. So how would their fight go? Well, Calidus won't have the chance to strategize and mess with Benimaru, as he'll immediately recognize our character as a threat and proceed to strike him down with full force. It works for a bit, but then he'll activate his Voltage Nova to toughen himself up, and the battle turns into a slugfest for a while, with both sides using the EI Hand Sword style of fighting, as Benimaru won't relent enough to let Calidus activate his more impressive moves. This battle starts shifting in his favor when he uses Talking Head to access his mind and figure out his attack patterns, blocking the strokes he can handle and controlling the flames of those he can't. Eventually, Calidus would straight up grab the man and toss him away at an incredible distance thanks to his new strength, though it's a very short reprieve as Benimaru will be flying safely after him. In that time, Calidus will access his hysterical strength to charge Excalibur to be able to cut through anything and use Severed Universe to freeze time, and that's the one move in his arsenal that Benimaru can't really counter against. While frozen, Calidus will strike at his opponent with full force, cutting the man down to as many pieces as possible, as his body begins to overheat from the strain of using too many moves at once. In the end, he lets time flow, and there's only a pile of meat where Benimaru once was. The ultimate power we've seen in Fire Force, essentially a god in the series and the leader of the White Clad, the Evangelist is the final fight for Calidus, and is a tough one. The Evangelist is a deity whose power we don't fully know. It lives on another plane of existence, but it's capable of traveling through dangerous areas with ease, and just looking at it would cause someone excruciating pain. It has the power to give grace, which is the Adola burst, and it seems to be able to take it away, though it's likely she can only take from those who are connected to her. From the get-go, Calidus would know that abilities like Sever Universe or his electric user abilities would be utterly useless because it's a being outside space-time and whose thoughts would only destroy him. Before he can act, a mere wave from the Evangelist could cause a city-sized earthquake, which he could escape thanks to his speed and reflexes. Afterwards, Calidus would realize that only pure raw firepower would have any hope of hurting this being. None of his tricks could work. So he uses his hyper-generation abilities to control the flames the Evangelist is pouring out and absorbing it into himself to power his Voltage Nova to its maximum level. Then he would activate his hysterical strength in lengthening Excalibur's blade to the size of a city. He would use his EI martial arts in their original blade forms to make one deliberate strike to finish her off. To do that, he uses fireballs and tossed objects to distract her from his plan, darting here and there to make sure she can't get a read on him. He'll let himself get hit with one of her attacks in order to give her a false sense of security, and because he can survive one hit at least. When it looks like he's beaten, he activates the blade and makes one clean slice on the Evangelist, severing her neck from her body, killing her. Now, what do you think would happen if our strongest character fought Joker, the whole White Clad, or even the Evangelist? Do you think he will win or fold under pressure? Let us know in the comments below. If you enjoyed this video, make sure to check out this video where I created the strongest character in the history of Isekai. Until next time, peace!